What I want to do is I want to set the table a little bit, and the comments I'm going to make are not disparaging towards the multilateral negotiations process. It is what it is. I mean, I've been to more COPs than I care to think about, both for the private sector and in my capacity when I was with government. I've also been to Davos, I think now 12 or 14 times. So my experience allows me to have a look at these things and to draw a picture for you on COP15, which is mine, but I'll share it with you. It was, for me, a real experience, a bit of a trauma, because there's both good and bad in what happened at COP15. The good part was that for the first time, you saw massive numbers of people, whether you believe that their intention is well-founded or not, concerned about the state of the planet's health. And that was a good thing. I even got to taste some of the sandwiches handed out by these groups who are pushing for all of us to become vegetarians. I can't say they were very good, but I got the message. The part that was traumatizing was that the year in which COP15 took place and the way in which it was organized logistically, it had become literally a zoo in my mind. A very difficult process through which you can get meaningful negotiations. There were also some shifts in the politics around COP15, but the outcome, if you're in business and you're looking at it, or if you're thoughtful and you've followed the COPs over the years, is a 6-page document, largely based on principles, but devoid of specifics. It endorses a decision to continue to work in the working groups, and it maintains the two-track process. The two-track process is the Kyoto process, where the Annex 1 countries have made engagements, and it also looks to a post-2012 scenario, a new agreement. Now, it doesn't say much more than that. On mitigation, there are no numbers, but there's reference to temperature rise, and everybody agrees we've got to try and keep the temperature increases to below 2 degrees. There's no overall global or developing country targets, but countries are supposed to submit their targets on a voluntary basis by the end of 2010. You have some positives that took place in some of the working groups around the COP, primarily on the deforestation and degradation, reduced emissions from deforestation and degradation. Good progress, probably a bit of a surprise. You have some non-specific agreement to market mechanism, and you've got some tangibles, at least in terms of engagements on financing and technology transfer, and even some progress in the field of agriculture. The big issue that hit me at COP15 was the failure of global governance. It became evident to me that that multilateral process will continue to evolve, but if it's going to succeed, or succeed at a faster pace than it has, then they're going to have to put in place some governance reforms. Also a shift in politics. You know, I can remember going to my first COP and it was a very different field. You didn't have the G2, never mind the G8, the G20, or the G77, which is now 132 countries. So you have a shift in terms of the ability of developing countries and the emerging powers to define and protect their own national interests. And I'll put it in those terms because you cannot expect these countries to willy-nilly go along with agreements that will, in effect, damage their ability to meet their constituents' expectations on improvements to their standards of living. This is a difficult thing to deal with because it's easy to fall into the trap of conspiracies and not to be able to accept the position, for example, of China, of Brazil, or some of the other countries as they come forward to deal with some of these very real issues. The other thing that happened at COP15 was what they referred to as ClimateGate. This was the the difficulty that science ran into because of the hacking into or the emails that were leaked from some of the scientific people who had been conducting climate research. And I've looked at this seriously, and I've come to the conclusion that it's a red herring. It's a red herring because we can easily fall into the theological communications campaigns of people who are for or against climate change and who caused it and who's responsible for it. But in point of fact, the global climate is warming, and that's the reality. And the real issue is, so if it's warming, what can we do about it, and how do we move forward in transforming our economies so that we have greener economies, not just low-carbon economies, but greener economies. So, what would business think of this? Well, brinksmanship, certainly. Power politics, absolutely. A series of commitments for parties willing to support but not legally binding and not universally welcomed. Not a very appetizing picture. When I talk to my friends in business and members who are members of the World Business Council on Sustainable Development, they're pretty down. And they're not down because they believe that business isn't a solution provider or that business isn't going to find a competitive opportunity, a commercial economic opportunity in devising new products and services and bringing forward meaningful change in the way that they develop technologies, the way they propagate technologies, and the way they continue to create wealth for themselves and for their shareholders and for the societies they work in. You have to remember that this is a fundamental driver in business. The world cannot, in Bjorn Stinkson's words, succeed in transitioning to sustainability without business as a committed solutions provider. So in point of fact, what we're likely to see over the next 5 to 10 years is this continuing multilateral negotiation process, and a lot of people from the bottom up, whether they're provinces, cities, companies, regions, working to improve the way in which they design products, they deliver services, and they continue to generate wealth. Their objective is a simple one. Find solutions to the problems that are going to make a meaningful difference without necessarily asking all of us to give up our standard of living or preventing those who aspire to a better standard of living from having the means to achieve it. Thank you.